don't hear the music playing, don't bring me.
Good morning, and for some people, good afternoon where you are. This is Business Talk again. Excited to be here. Hope everybody's doing fine. If you're on, share the show. Share the show. Let other people get involved with this. We want maximum participation. So I see my man wearing a beautiful T-shirt there, even though it has some significance. Good morning, brother. How are you?
Good morning, good morning, good morning to everyone. I'm wearing this T-shirt because yesterday marked 1 year. 1 year. We had our 1 year memorial of my wife's passing on July 3rd. So we came together as a family, brought friends and some of her business, some of her customers, close friends, relations. We all came together here in our little town, Waller, went to her gravesite and laid flowers and wreaths and whatnot, spent time there, and then came to the house and just had a nice gathering, good fellowship with food, and just the testimonies of how they met her and those different things. So I'm just thankful that, 1 year we've come through it and the Lord kept the family together despite and in spite of all of the challenges, but He kept everybody together. We just thank everyone for their prayers, their love, and everything, and intercessions. So I'm wearing her T-shirt today, and we're celebrating her life and celebrating our holding together.
Wonderful. We have to do that. We're glad there's a positive note on that. We go through these challenges, the trials, these tribulations. By the end of the day, we who remain here, we got to persevere. We got to be resilient. We got to survive because we still have a lot to do for so many other people. So
Mhm.
we have to keep the engine pumping. We got to keep it
Yes,
moving. Yeah.
yes.
So yes, it's a wonderful restart to Business Talk. The last few episodes have been wonderful. It has been well received by people, and we look to continue that because now
Yes, indeed.
we are looking at the economy, the structure of our
Mhm.
economy, how it impacts, businesses, how it impacts the people, and looking at what some of the changes that could be done. We don't say disrupt everything, but there are different things that government can probably do to help us where we are to improve some things. And that responsibility is on government, is on the people, is on the entrepreneurs, and it also rests in part with the international community, understanding our nuances and being able to work with us and us being able to make some of those demands. Because if you don't really demand, sometimes nobody know what you're thinking. So
That's exactly
uh,
right.
this stuff we're talking about new thinking, we have to think a new way. We can't let
Yes.
people impose things on us. We have to start to build that freedom of thought, that progressive idea that look, we really want to build our country, and it comes from our leaders. It comes from how they interface with the international people, how they interface with foreign businesses, how they interface with the concessions that we have signed, how they
Mhm.
stand on them and stand in the best interest of the people. Those are all some of the factors that will come into play as we continue to break down our economy and talk about its impact on people and businesses and everything like that. So, if you want to give a little feedback on what we've done so far, especially we were able to talk about the electricity sector the other day, and you had a major input to that. But we look forward to bringing some of the folks from LEC to really get into that. Hopefully next week is a possibility we'll get somebody. If not, we'll still continue to break down the economy and talk about how we can improve and start looking at individual sectors and what's important there. So
No, this, like you said, I mean, business talk is back, and in this new relaunching of business talk. It's all about our mindsets now. There's got to be a new thinking about our growth, our development, job creation. And I go back to that powerful word that you threw into this new business talk edition, ecosystem. We need to now start thinking ecosystem. We now have to, there's a new way of thinking that is required. We cannot think the old way and expect different results. And the ecosystem mindset and the integral parts of that ecosystem harmoniously working together. And like you mentioned, we need to clearly define our vital national security interests, our vital national economic interests, and we must develop policies and programs along those lines so that we get the maximum benefit. Because and that requires a whole new way of thinking from the ecosystem concept, the different sectors, as you said, of the economy, how they fit into the ecosystem, what role they play in the ecosystem, the role electricity plays in the ecosystem, the role telecommunications plays in the ecosystem, the role the internet plays in the ecosystem, the role the diaspora, in the US, Europe, Canada plays in the ecosystem, the role that the liberalization policy plays in the ecosystem. Those are all the ingredients that are part of this ecosystem. And then most importantly, that young and up and coming generation population across Liberia, what role they play in the ecosystem. It is so important that we need to make sure that that generation played a very vital role in making sure that they're the recipients of the benefits of this new ecosystem mindset and thinking. Yeah, that is so critical and so vital and so important. And we want to give a shout out before I go any further here that we are broadcasting live on Radio Kakata on 101.7 megahertz. We're broadcasting live there, and we are also broadcasting live in Banga Bon County today on Radio Lila, FM 92.1. So we're all across the internet, and we are also broadcasting live within Kakata, Upper Margibi County, and also in Bon County as well. Thank you so much to all the guys making this possible. Business Talk coming to you live. I'm here in Houston, Texas, in the U.S. by the power of the internet. And Alba Tokba is up there where are you, Alba?
Thank you for asking. I'm chilling in New Orleans at the Essence Festival. For many who don't know, a friend of mine, Mr. Richard Dennis, he owns Essence, and Essence is a major event, especially for Black people. Black women are the primary supporters. So it has been a historical event, and at one time, I believe, it was taken over by some Caucasian folks, but today now it's fully owned by a Black person, Mr. Richard Dennis. And this weekend is the Essence weekend. It's typically the last weekend in June to the first weekend in July, based on how the weekend comes about. So it basically kicked off on Thursday, with some preparatory stuff and some sessions. But yesterday was the first big day at the convention center. A lot of activities were going on. Today, a lot more activity. Actually, I believe Madam Obama, Michelle Obama, she was doing in her opinion, talk show along with Tiana Taylor, T. Taylor. I didn't get there early. I got to town. I should have come on Thursday, but unfortunately, I missed my flight. So I had to come on Friday, and
Things happen. Things happen.
things do happen, man. Sometimes your eye look at one line when it's actually should be looking at the line above it or the line below it. And when you hit that thing in your brain and register, it just gets stuck. And away you go by. I misread the line of my actual departure,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Wow.
I missed my flight. So I put down myself. I ain't gonna just do it and say anything. But yes, happy to be here. We'll be hanging with a lot of friends, this weekend. A lot of people I haven't seen in a while too, and some of them, I just see them once a year, and this is about that time that we do. So it's a lot of get together, enjoying each other, catching up, and stuff like that. Plus, also enjoying
Yes.
the festivities. A lot of booths. There's a theme kind of market. We love us market that
Hmm.
Essence Group has set up primarily for Black products, Black entrepreneurs. So they're doing their thing, and it's been very impressive. It's been very receptive, in terms of engaging potential people, whether it's artists, they're expanding now to
Hmm. Hmm.
different areas, like again, the building of Black ecosystem,
Yes,
that can
that's
be done
exactly right. Yeah.
from an economic, social, cultural, perspective. They are building it, and it's working, it's progressing. There will always be challenges, there will always be mistakes and flaws, but as long as you're committed and dedicated to doing what you need to do, you can make it happen. So
Well, that's
yes.
good. I mean, that is very, very good. So let's dive into today's show. Let's talk
Mhm.
about the topic you wanted to be brought up today, the
Right,
Washington Consensus. So let's
right.
educate everybody about what this Washington Consensus is, the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how. This Washington Consensus. What is it? How does it affect Liberia, the Monterey Union, ECOWAS, the African Union? What is it and what let's go into, so you take the lead on that, you take the
Right,
lead on
right.
it.
So basically, in the late '80s, this guy named John Williamson, an economist, he basically um summarized for the different economists that are out there, the ones at the IMF, the one at the World Bank, U.S. Treasury Department, and brought all of them together in Washington D.C. So that's the Washington part of it, and then they came to a consensus on something, and that something is what currently drives all the development in developing country, right? And because most of our developing countries were in crisis, whether we're just coming from war or whether we our economy is not stable, whether we experiencing growth without development or no growth, no development, complete stagnation. So that's where it came from. They got together, these top level economists from these international institutions, from the US Treasury, and all collected in DC to do that, to come to that conclusion. And then they had, some ideas, some prescriptions, some economic prescriptions in terms of, you know, what governments need to do to get the economies on track, right? So they start with something like fiscal discipline, where government needs to be more responsible, cut their deficits, and all of that stuff. They started, instead of government subsidizing some things, they were moving those things away from, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's agriculture. So those subsidies that I use right now, I think recently I was reading an article where the Minister of Agriculture basically came out and said, yes, they're trying, but the subsidy is not adequate. And they have something I believe it's the Maputo arrangement or agreement where agriculture is supposed to be, I think, some percentage of the budget, probably 10%. But agriculture is not there. If it's 3%, then that's even very good. So it's operating, the ministry is operating below where it should be, and resources are limited, so it affects them. So those are, some of the kinds of things that where so there's no subsidy there, probably because the budget is shaped based on the uh, uh, um, confines of the Washington Consensus. Then there's the tax reform. So They want to broaden the tax base, and that part, and not everything they're saying is wrong, right? Because I believe in broadening the tax base. For example, we look at something like real estate collection, real estate taxes collection. Um, what is it? I think over the last, I don't know, 8, 10 years, it has averaged like 5.3 million. So that is low because supposedly they got like about 33,000 houses in the tax net that they are actually taxing. The average for that would be $175, and we know there are some significant buildings in Liberia that should be paying way more. And there's a whole bunch of people who are not paying taxes at all, and that has to change. If you own property, if you have structure on that property, the government is supposed to tax the land and the structure, and we have to learn to pay taxes. That's how things happen. But in the same, on the flip side, the people who paying those taxes to, they got to benefit the different communities that the taxpayers are coming from. They got to benefit the people. The other one is like interest rates, how you liberalize interest rates, and you don't have any control, any restriction. Let the market set the interest rate. So that means based on how the banks see the economy going, how the lenders see it, how other people see it, they can set their interest rates at that without central bank control. But I think the central bank is trying to get into that space a little bit and redirect some of those things because many of those rates are just extortionary. Then there's the whole thing about trade, right? We with the incentives we gave the international people coming in, whether we're lowering tariffs, we just opening up imports. If you bring in this, it comes in free. You bring in that, it comes in free. We open it up to the folks bringing in, foreign direct investment, and it's not um, with that huge level of importation, without internalizing to say what can we produce, what can we export, how do we add value, because we're just bringing those imports in and we're just shipping out, everything like that. And then for some of the state-owned enterprises, they want to deregulate them, so um, they remove any barriers that other competition may have for state-run enterprises. And then there's the issue of property rights. We just briefly talk about that. You need to secure property rights. You need to establish national identification. All of those things need to be done. So, yes, they sound reasonable, but sometimes you got to assess that reasonableness and see how it fits into your economy. And that's where, our people, our economists in government need to do more due diligence, need to do more work around all these different agreements. Are you there? Or you dropped?
Yeah, I'm right. I'm right here.
Okay.
The point you made is so significant and profound because you know the key thing, strategically, from the government perspective, we need to figure how to reduce the size of government and increase the size of the private sector. Because the growth for job creation, better pay, higher wages comes from the private sector and not from the government sector. We agree. Okay. And that's the key. But how do you grow the private sector? How do you grow the private sector? Yeah. How do you grow the private sector? The private sector can only grow again diaspora, investment coming back from abroad in. Then you've got local Liberian businesses investing, and then plus you also have foreign direct investment. So those are the three components. You got diaspora investment, which I believe is the largest portion of it. Then you also have foreign direct investment. Most times, there's always extracting, natural resources and things of that nature, timber, what and whatnot. And then you've got the local Liberian businesses, small, medium, large Liberian businesses who are trying to grow and plug into this sector. So if we want to increase our tax base, this is what we're talking about. The Washington consensus is there, But at the same time, we need to bring our own creative thinking to this process. Because even if you look at the Washington Consensus, there are different parts. They talk about, the agriculture sector. What is the agriculture sector going to do? Because you got cash crops in the agriculture sector, and you got produce in the agriculture sector.
Right. Full
You
crops.
know,
Yep.
and they're food crops. So and then you look at Liberia. Liberia is basically primarily an agrarian economy. That's all. Agriculture should be our base. It should be our foundation. But if you agree with that, but then how do you stimulate? How do you stimulate growth in that sector? How do you create more jobs in that sector? How does that sector go to creating more jobs, providing more opportunities all across the various political subdivisions, and then adding to the tax base? Because if you create more jobs, then you got more people you can tax. And then if you tax more people, and those people make more wages and better wages, engineers, technicians, mechanics, so forth and so on, those people have an improvement, a better level of life, a quality of life. And then you can look at now, like you mentioned about the real estate tax. Those people will buy land, 1 acre, one lot, two lot, three lot, whatever the case is, build their houses, and those houses can now be taxed. And then we look at putting in the services in those geographical areas. So again, it goes back to the ecosystem. It goes back to the ecosystem. So the Washington Consensus, even if you dissect it into from all of its parts or into all of its parts, there are various parts because that Washington Consensus itself is an ecosystem. It is an ecosystem. So how do we now bring that ecosystem mindset, right, and superimpose it with the Washington Consensus and bring this new level of new way of thinking that we
So
as a nation, as a people, must think more integration wise.
so when you look at it, before, let's say in the early stages, it was like, um, you know, you look at what your situation is and you try to find what fits for it, right? Within the confines of what the international financial institutions were doing. But now we get the word conditionalities, conditionalities, conditionalities. So they're basically telling us, here is what you must do. And if you want this aid, this is condition for receiving it, you know. So they are control instruments right now. What those loans are and what those um, Washington consensus ideas are, they are the instruments that are used to control, us. And we see that some other countries have shunned those things and they're going out and done things differently, done it a different way. And it's helping them because some of these structured programs, we don't really see the benefit. We've been in these programs for years, and they come with all these different kind of acronyms, whether it's resilience, whether it's um, uh, propo, and we see it in other countries. The same kind of cookie cutter solutions that we get here is the same thing that other people get. So now we got to start thinking that these structural adjustment programs, they call them SAPs, that we who are in this whole fiscal crisis, and when we go to the IMF or the World Bank, because they got the concessional loans, right? Those loans with lower interest rate. But we have to start thinking, how can we expand our own fiscal space? What are the things that we need to do that you were just asking that facilitates this economic growth that comes with development, that our own people, not just exports, not just our raw materials just going out of the country, but our own people are part of it. Take, for example, recently we've been talking a lot about mining, mining, mining. Where are we preparing if that becomes a windfall? If we have critical minerals here, if we have a continual outflow of gold, we got iron ore galore. What are we doing to say, let's add one level, maybe two levels to this whole value chain of these particular products that it can be refined, that when they leave our show, they're now $1, they're more like $10, where we have added value that is significant and it helps our people. And how we putting some of our people building their capacity, building their skill sets, like in part of these programs, productive part. And those are the kind of things that are supposed to keep our people up at night where they shouldn't sleep. And we got to set our own internal targets separate from the World Bank targets because we want our economy to expand a certain way. Unfortunately, we are in a drastic situation and we are limited in terms of how much control we have. And let us not even fool ourselves. These are not easy things to do. Okay. This is real work. People got to be serious about it, how to have long range plan. That's why all these intermediate plans, medium term plans and stuff, you know, yes, they decently work, but they gotta be within the confines of a larger plan that says, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, Liberia should be over here. And hopefully those kind of plans can be legislated where it really pushes uh, um, the next government to not just come in there, change everything. They got to operate within that national legislative 25-year development plan. So, we can look at this, we can stretch it out and see how it applies, see how some sectors will be more amenable, talk about some of the tradition, because right now I believe there's some effort for the central bank to be more active in moving our economy. Yes, they need to be focusing on the macro side, but they can also implement macro activities that can drive, development in the economy. So let me add, again, I'm back to the stage. I don't know whether
Yeah,
you're
I got
listening.
I'm listening. I've been listening to everything you're saying. I've been listening here. There's something wrong with this thing. I've got to fix it. But anyway,
Right.
you brought up some very, very important points. So let's dissect them, right? So we talked about the conditionality of the Washington Consensus. So once you engage in that Washington consensus process, you as a country, as a nation, you need to understand that there are certain conditions, terms and conditions that business people will call it, right? In everything, even if you get a credit card, there are terms and conditions to that credit card you're getting. If you get a lease, you lease a house, lease an apartment, there are terms and conditions. You're buying a piece of equipment, there are terms and conditions. So naturally, once you engage in the Washington consensus, there are terms and conditions. But the critical question here is, as leaders, are those terms and conditions aligned with your vital national and economic interests? Do they align? Do they pair up? Do they support your growth, your development, your progress, your job creation, the growth of your economy? Because you got more people graduating from colleges in Liberia today than any time in our nation's history. And where are the jobs for those young people? So, when you get yourself aligned with these, and now we got more commercial bankers, no more commercial banking institutions in Liberia today than any time in our nation's history. Are we using that critical resource to finance different projects and making them partners in those projects? But again, that requires a different level of thinking, a new way of thinking that the banking institutions need to be part of your growth and your development process,
The
not just
ecosystem,
institutions.
everybody got a
That's
role.
right. Everybody has a role in the ecosystem. And that's where this new critical thinking needs to take place. That's where this new way of thinking needs to take place. The ecosystem. In order for this ecosystem, which is the Republic of Liberia, to survive, to prosper, to thrive, the ecosystem and all of its integral parts, energy, water, telecommunications, the internet, roads, bridges, all of those different things, and the role of the diaspora, all of those things have to play a, we need to totally define what those roles are. I listened to the portion where you were talking about short, medium, and long-term goals and objectives. It's not about, it's not about what the quote unquote CDC plans and what their strategies were. It's not about what the United Positive plans and strategy was. No, it's got to be what are the critical, vital national and economic interests of the Republic of Liberia. We need more roads, whether it's this government or that government. We need roads. Roads play a major part in the ecosystem. We need energy. It's not about this government or that government. No, that's a vital national interest, that's a vital economic interest. We need greater telecommunication infrastructure. Now we've got two privately owned companies. Don't forget, these are privately owned companies. That infrastructure is not for the Republic of Liberia. No, we have the telco, which is the national operator. That's a telecom infrastructure, telephone company
Mm.
owned by and for the people. Where is the investment in that telecommunications company so that they can get a portion of the market share so that those profits remain in country? Those are all critical questions. So again, electricity. Where does the banking population, where does the banking institution play a role in that? Because we need efficiency in that aspect of the ecosystem. We need productivity. We need profitability in that segment. And that segment there, that one segment plays a critical role in all of the integral parts of this ecosystem. So the question, the key thing for us that we're pushing today for everyone listening from Monrovia on Facebook to Kakata to Bon County is a new way of thinking the ecosystem. Nobody is independent. We're all interdependent. Interdependency is the key element of the survival, the prosperity, the triumphing of the ecosystem. Interdependency. You turn one thing over here, it affects a whole bunch of other things over here. So there's a strategic balance. And in last but not least, I will add this. We need to also think about, like I said, the young people, the young generation, right? The
Mhm.
young men. What are we doing with our young men? What role do they play in what sectors of the economy? Our young women, they're going to become mothers, they're going to become wives, they're going to be, I mean, what role are they playing? They're going to play in this ecosystem across the country. So I mean, we need to think more strategically and we need to act in a tactical way as it relates to the ecosystem, considering where we want to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. Because everybody who's 10 years today, 10 years old today, in 5 years will be 15. In 10 years, they'll be 20 years old. So we need to create a place for them in this ecosystem, in the economy, you see. So that it requires a whole new way of thinking.
Right. And part of that is people understanding the economy too, which is very critical. People understanding what they need to do, what their roles are. And to a large extent, that has to be communicated to many people because, we don't have it like that in terms of our people, knowing it. They got some these assumptions that just assume that you have a functioning underlying economy, and that's not true a lot of times because there are no existing jobs. There's limited taxation going on, like we just discussed, whether is from the real estate perspective, whether is from so many other areas that government could be generating revenue. We're not saying tax people to get out of this economic development conundrum, but there are certain obligations that people must be able to fulfill to government, especially when it comes to you owning land, um, when it comes to you building homes or building structures on that land. It's supposed to be something that government can tax. And hopefully people will understand that, taxation is a good thing. It's just that when government misuse the taxation as a tool and, people are also being impacted negatively by that, then it doesn't work out at all. It doesn't work out for anybody. And like Akina was saying, our young people need to be involved in this economy. We can't take liberalization as a joke. It got to be very proactive. Government has to commit to say if stationary is a sector that's reserved for Liberians. We've got to find those people in that sector who are doing well and push them and let them be able to bring people behind them and elevate the sector. And if we don't do those things for just about every sector, identify Liberians who can be facilitated, who can be supported. We know government doesn't have money for everything, but government is able to make an impact for certain people to set an example and to start that process, that natural gravitation process when people know the government behind and they themselves just jump behind the government and say, we were this government. So we need to look at some of those things and see how they can be improved. I think Akina is having some technical difficulties, so we just hope he can, um, come back on where he's here. But we just at that midpoint where we said, now we'll be trying to profile all Liberian business and share their information and what they are saying. So today we have uh agro ready. So let me get to the document that we have for them and see how we can share what they are about. Okay, so we go here and share our screen so you can see it. Let me go to this share screen, share presentation. Okay. Oops. There we go. So there we go. Agro ready. So the lady there in the image, she's go ready, but her company name is Agro Ready, and its foundation is agriculture. As you can see, is about adding value to agricultural products. So let's zoom this. I'm not sure if you've seen it in terms of its size or anything like that, but let's zoom in a little bit. We saw the picture there already. And what she's saying, she said, life can be fast paced. Your food should keep up. When you are in a hurry, but no nutrient rich food is important, agro ready is your go to. So she's telling you now her food is nutrient dense, nutrient rich, and she wants to make your life easy while keeping our traditional food a part of it. And in terms of the about us, Agro Ready is an agro business with an aim of supporting local farmers and empowering women in agriculture, all the while producing locally grown food that is processed and packaged in Liberia, right? Their goal is to eradicate hunger in Liberia and ensure that every household can afford to eat nutritiously and deliciously. So that nutritiously, that's a critical word because a lot of food don't have nutrients. A lot of our foods in the market, whether it's um, the hot dog stuff, whether it's some of the stuff that's imported here, whether it's the milk that our children are drinking and stuff, a lot of young people suffer malnutrition, and that needs to change. The numbers have been getting better over the years, but the fact that there's still hunger and malnutrition in some areas are things that we all as a people need to work on. And yes, what the products are: cassava chips, crunchy, buttery, smooth chips made from our second staple food, cassava. Then they got the Edo chips as well, nutritious, crunchy, and light grill for rich taste and satisfaction. And my favorite, the sweet potato chips, crispy, golden, sweet, and savory, just for your liking. So you see, they got products, and all of they got it in salted and they got it in barbecue. So they gave you a choice, a variety of products, and and you can see this the chips right here, the Edo chips, the potato chips, the cassava chips. So the vision of self-sufficient Liberia, where locally produced food leads the market. Can you imagine that? If we had locally produced food leading our market instead of imported stuff, that would be great for Liberians because a lot of the locally produced food is nutrient dense and rich, and limited fertilizers are being used on them. So they're not totally organic. Some of them is close to it, you know. So they're trying to see how the land can best work for the people, how they can increase employment, and these different value um, addition on these different products, how it works. So there she is again with a couple of women farmers. You see her colors in her hand. Again,
Mm,
the mission to add value to locally grown produce by working directly with farmers to create high quality food products, empower livelihood, reduce poverty, and strengthen Liberia's path toward food sufficiency while competing confidently with
with
imported
imported
goods.
goods.
So she
Yeah,
embraced the competition. She's saying,
yes,
I can
yes,
compete with them. My stuff is better.
yes, yes,
You
yes,
know,
yes.
isn't that
And
interesting?
it's very, very interesting. It's very, very impactful. And I'm sure she came from the diaspora, so she's a representative.
When it's one of them,
Let's listen to her ad. Go ahead. Let's listen to her ad. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm gonna reboot.
when it's
Okay,
one of them days,
bring me
everything
back
go
in.
your way and your soundtrack plays like when the good time stays and it's not just a phase, you can feel the level raise like.
So you saw that, basically somebody going shopping and getting her stuff.
Hey
And I
guys,
love this other
hey
commercial.
guys, the FIFA World Cup is finally
Okay.
here, and as the owner of Agriretti, I am proud to announce that we are not an official World Cup sponsor. You will not find us in the stadiums. You will not find us on the sidelines. You will not find us on the players' jerseys, but you will find us in supermarkets across Liberia, waiting for you to enjoy every match with a bag of Agriretti chips. So while the players are chasing trophies, we'll be busy helping fans chase snacks. Agriretti chips is bringing West African flavor to every game day. So wherever you're gathering with your friends, don't forget to grab a pack of Agriretti chips.
Thank you. That's the CEO, folks. Um, she's sharing her product, and hopefully she can get the kind of support that's needed. We really need to support Liberian businesses. If you know a Liberian business that's trying to, or businesses that are trying to do well, and you would like them profile on this show, please send the information to us. Send us the owner, the CEO information, and we can try to put information out there that supports, our Liberian businesses, because business is competitive. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes for people to, to make money off Liberians. So we need to. Oh, yeah, I think Akino is coming back. Okay, now I can see him. So let me add him to the show. So yeah,
Yeah,
so
I
that
mean,
was Agro ready. Yeah, you wanted to make some commentary on her stuff.
this is important because I mean, this is the essence of what we've been talking about over the past years as it relates to business talk. So here it is. I'm sure she's most likely from the diaspora. So that's
No,
diaspora.
she's local. She's in Liberia. Very progressive young lady.
Very okay, very good. So, but again, her influence to do this came through what? Through the power of the internet. So that's the role of telecommunications. She's identified that there is a market. I'm sure she did her market survey with all of the imported potato chips and different things in the market. She did her mathematical calculations with regards to what existing market is there. Okay, then she probably set up a production line, probably got, went by way of China to find material equipment that she will need to process the chips, went into the
No, her
market,
packaging is nice. Her packaging is really nice.
packaging, and she went and found the local grower. So again, and then for the most important part, all of that equipment runs on electricity energy. So her production cost has got to be in a way where she's more profitable. So that's the whole ecosystem. This is what we've been talking about. This is the whole ecosystem. So everything that lady does with regards to agro ready is her entire business stems from where? From the agriculture sector. From the agriculture sector. And the thing is, people, if you increase their earnings from the private sector side, they will buy more products.
That's true. I mean, we
Yes.
just talked about malnutrition. But I mean, people would buy the cheap food because That's what it is.
That's
So
it. Yeah.
they're spending all this money. We know these importers, primarily the Lebanese, the Indians, they're not bringing quality food, quality
No.
products to the country.
No.
We look at all the different little drinks that people have out there, and you try to look at the label and see what they made of. That's sugar water for the most part. You look
Mm-hmm.
at even some of the products that are being imported, they're just fragile, they just mess up. One of my biggest
Yeah.
pet peeves in Liberia is the toilet seat. They got some of the cheapest toilet seats anywhere you can find in the world, you know. So we got to find a way that Liberians can be empowered to import some quality stuff as well, and not let our, you know, um, import system just depend on foreigners. Because right now,
Yeah.
most of the people bringing stuff are foreigners.
Yes, because again, I mean, like I said, Liberia is a big market. So you got consumer goods or consumable goods, which plays a major role for importers. So there's no real value add at the importation level. It's just cash and spend, cash and spend, cash and spend. And most of those businesses that are focusing on the importation of goods, they're they've got two focus. One is on salaries, people who have salaries to spend money, and then they're focusing on the remittance that comes in through Western Union, MoneyGram, and Sendwave. So the people who receive money, they spend their money on rent and on food, and then the canned goods, the imported goods. But what we need to do in this ecosystem for it to survive, to prosper, and to create more jobs for Liberians at all levels is we need this new way of thinking about it. There's got to be, this old way of thinking has got to go out the window. I'm not saying that Washington consensus is bad, is evil, is wrong. No, I'm just saying
It's
what
how it's used. You're right.
is how it's used. I mean, it's like any device and like any instrument. You can use a screwdriver to open the door, but by the time get you using that screwdriver to open the door is probably of no use. You're gonna have to buy a new lock, new knob, and everything because you use the wrong tool. So we need a new way of thinking. If we want to grow our manufacturing base, grow our value added base, grow our value add on the agriculture side, then we have to also look at the investment in the energy sector. Then we have to also look at the investment in the telecommunications sector. We need because these are all integral parts of this ecosystem. And I'll expand upon what you talked about. So why is it that this company, what was it? Agro Ready, right? Agro Ready,
Agro ready. Yes.
Agro Ready. So why isn't this company existing in every political subdivision? You see, because energy is not everywhere. Energy is not in Lo-Fi. It's not
And they're
in
not
government.
everywhere. The funds
It's
to
not
scale
everywhere.
up operations
It
and
wants
hire
to scale up
people.
operations. That's exactly right. So we need to look at it from that perspective, and that the reason I brought that up is how the decentralization law, right? How does that play in the ecosystem? So that all of these critical parts of this holistic ecosystem can be decentralized into each of the political subdivisions, where you don't have economic growth only in one place, and then that becomes the magnet, and you depopulate all of the other counties, and everybody's
It,
running
it,
to
again, it comes with planning. It comes with
yes,
planning. And the law, sometimes we will create laws. It's
mhm.
necessary to do something called a cost benefit analysis or
That's
benefit cost
exactly right.
analysis,
Yes,
where you look at what is the benefit of this law to the people. And now you can have quantitative benefit where you can actually measure that benefit. And then you
that's
can have
exactly right.
qualitative benefit
Mhm.
that you can use different, substitution factors
Mhm.
to kind of quantify it, but it's not
Yes,
actually just quantifiable. Like whether they it impacted people, whether they benefit, how does it increase the standard of living and stuff like that. Some of those factors would not be like a physical calculation, but you can
mhm.
be measured based on you giving if yes 5 points is no. You just structure whatever your question or survey to get an answer is in a way that you can get some kind of result that you can kind of quantify and say, you know 40% of the people said XYZ, 50% said this, it means this on the economy. So, we just have to understand where we are with these things and how government can support and impact it. But again, we also have that responsibility in terms of our roles within the ecosystem. But I just wanted to go back a little bit. We probably got 21, 22 minutes to talk about the whole intellectual concept of, some of this economic lineage, right? If we go back to the discussion about comparative advantage, we've been talking about, what do we really have comparative advantage in? Is this guy named Ricardo. He was writing about the trade between Portugal and England. That was back in the early 1800s. That's where that whole theory came about. Then when it comes to Milton Friedman, he's like one of the godfather of economics. He focused on monetary, on monetary theory, right? And that transition was based on 20th century America. But 21st century Liberia is not 20th century America.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They were already developed. They already had some things. They were already institutionalized. They were already industrialized. So sometimes the comparison will base them like that, they don't work. And then the stuff that concerning the growth model by Robert Solow, the growth models, they were focused on advanced industrial economies.
Yes.
These guys, nobody said they're stupid. No, they were focusing on their economies, but unfortunately now, that thinking, that ideology, the different kinds of economic thoughts, they are influencing everybody coming out of Africa.
Everybody, that's exactly right.
What we are being taught, right? So we are learning what these people were doing for their own economies, and our economy is now a similar reflection. We're not
at all.
Development where those people were. So the models are assuming some things about our economy that they are already functioning. They assume you got a good legal system. They assume, your courts are fair. They assume your officials are not just corrupt. They're just some inherent assumptions that they don't really change in order to apply those concepts to us. And that limits it. So, they got different people who have written about property rights, about land ownership, about building or cadastral and how much better it will be. National identification. In the people system, they assume everybody is identified. All foreigners, all children, all, youth, all adults. People know them, they know who they are. So they can easily use a financial system. But we don't have that luxury because that's what it is for us. Even right now, the National Identification Registry is down. It's not activated yet, and it'll probably be nearly 6 months or more, simply because there's a bad contract out there that probably can do the work, but they want to take our money. In essence, we have to pay for that service. Now, don't get me wrong, we have to pay for it, but there could be a place where a lot of these things happen more easily, like the central bank talk about financial systems. Okay, if national identification is not set up that everybody can be easily identified, or credit rating system, or all these different things that people want to enhance their profile for credit from the bank and stuff, will not work because we
go
ahead.
There's something in for us who are into sales, business development as engineers. It's a thing we call Me Too. It's called the Me Too concept, meaning that when you go to visit a customer and he's talking about a product or service or whatever it is, you say, "Well, we provide that too." When he's talking about this, "Oh yeah, we do that too." So most of these things on within Liberia, we just want to be a Me Too. We can do that too. we can do that too. But we're doing that also. But the critical thinking that's
But not just about
needed.
love, though.
No, I don't
Because
disagree. I
that
mean,
tendency too. When you bring a new idea, you want to do something. Oh, we're already doing it. Oh, we're already
yes,
doing it. Yeah, we got an idea.
yeah, but like you said, where is the quantitative analysis? How much is coming out of that project, process, program? And
Right.
then what is the quality, the QC side? That's why you have QC, quality assurance, quality control managers. They're not just
Mm-hmm.
looking at the quantity, but they're doing quality assessment on what's coming off the production line. You get my point. Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe for every 500 pieces that come out, they would take two and they would take 5 or 10 and take it to the lab and check it, break it down, and make sure that everything is running. So you're right. We're not doing a cost benefit analysis like on the national identification system. Okay, within the ecosystem, how important is this national identification process? If it is that vital, that critical, and that important to the success of the ecosystem, then where do we need to make the capex investment, and with whom, with what company, so we get the what, the qualitative and the quantitative benefits of it, because we know now that it is critical, it is vital, and it is important. You don't just give somebody a contract because of kickback, because the PowerPoint presentation was done right. No, you got to understand the critical nature of this project in the overall scope of this whole ecosystem. If it breaks down, how will it affect the entire ecosystem? If there's failure, how will it affect the entire ecosystem? Because that national identification process is also tied to the electoral process. It's also tied to the electoral process. It's directly tied to the electoral process. So
It
again,
does.
if that process is broken down, if it fails, it affects everything. It affects everything in, I mean, several different parts of this ecosystem is affected. The education system is affected by it. Passport systems are affected by it.
Yeah,
So I
everything.
don't I don't think there's enough thought. There's enough high level thought. There's enough where there's enough lateral level thought, and where there's enough thought in terms of depth as to how these things play a role within the ecosystem. You know, I mean, you look at this company today, agro ready. Agro, there should be an agro ready company, right? Because for her, as she makes her product, she's focusing on distribution within Monrovia. But at the same time, she can create more jobs because there are so many convenience stores and small stores who would want to carry her product. So she would
Yeah.
create more jobs. There will be people who will want to start distributing her products in Buchanan. That's more opportunities for more businesses there. So,
And
and
she
the
would need
women
more
go,
efficient machines that
and
can
she will need
produce
more
a higher
efficient
volume.
machines. That's exactly right. Okay, so she will need the internet to tie in to make sure, and so forth and so on. So, so the leaders that sit at the top, at the apex of this triangle, this ecosystem, I mean, if they don't have a vision, then I mean, we're in a critical mass. And that's the reason why we're not growing, we're not expanding, we're not creating the jobs, we're not providing the opportunities. We're extracting natural resources. The energy challenge cannot be met, cannot be solved, cannot be addressed in an effective, efficient, and knowledgeable way. We're just rolling. We just continue. It's like everything within the Liberian ecosystem is just coincidence. It's just happening by, I mean, just, you know, it's like you play pool, right? You hit the ball on the table and it's just bouncing off of everything else.
Just
And that
ricochet
can,
off everything.
yeah, that
You
cannot
know
be a
what will
way
drop in
for
the hole, what will not drop in the hole.
yes. And there's another thing we have. There's another saying we have in the in sales and marketing and business development. Hope is not a strategy.
No,
You
hope is
cannot
not a
hope.
strategy.
You cannot hope this thing to prosperity. No, you're going to have to develop a plan. You're going to have to develop a strategy. You're going to have to build a team of competent people. Those team members must be held accountable for what role they're going to play. And they've got to produce, you must have what? Key performance indexes as to how you move this thing down the field towards success. So it's so vital, it's so critical, this new way of thinking. So for everybody up there in Bong County, or everybody down in the Monrovia area, everybody in the on Facebook and lower and upper Magidi, new thinking is required. New thinking is required. There's a new way we got to think. We got to think that every one of us, the farmers who, the market, we they play a major role in the ecosystem. The people planting the cassava and the edibles and the plantain, they play a major role in the ecosystem. Without them, there's nothing in the market. There's nothing in the market. You see, I'm going to reset.
And that's true. That's why. So at this stage now, we can come and look at so many ways that these models treat individuals, because the individual is the basic unit of economic life, right? So everything these models do at that high level, they trickle down from the high level to the broader economy, to the markets within the government administration, and then it trickles down to people. So we have to be able to always ask ourselves, what's the greater good here? What's the benefit for the people? And that's part of that same cost benefit analysis, where you would say the people can benefit from this X, Y, Z, and be clear about it. Some of it will come quantify, some will not come quantify. So it's just about us finding the right stuff that works for us, because we know these international programs have not really worked. Right now, I don't know where the debt stand. I haven't looked at the central bank for a long time, but the debt is significant. It's rising up again. Are we going to try to get another debt waiver? I don't even know if it's even possible. Okay. So we need to work. Let me see if I can stay here. We need to work. He keeps dropping off, folks. Sorry. We need to work and make this thing happen. So let's look at some examples of this Washington consensus when it has been applied, and when people have rejected and gone on to do their own thing. Back in the 1980s in our part of the world, 80s and 90s, sub-Saharan Africa, right? They were really poor African countries, very poor, and some of them had to comply with the World Bank in order for them to say they're growing. So when we look at ourselves and see where we came from and how we have progressed, compared with some of the other countries that did not follow that blueprint, those structural adjustments, those loans with conditionalities, they did their own thing. It affects people. You look at South Korea, you look at Taiwan, you look at China, India, they did it their own way. Even Mauritius, that's in Africa, right? So they put themselves on a different process as to how they will use the industrial policy, how to use the monetary policy, how they will pick certain sectors to support for certain activity. He talked about the interest rate, how the capital markets can be impacted. All of these things are factors that you have to look at to understand how serious and big this challenge is and how we need to approach it. Because as you go down, you see the differences between what other people are doing, what we are doing. Right now in Africa, quite a few countries are really standing their ground and being able to move their country forward, because they are saying, look, if you're digging gold from us, you must process the gold here. If you're digging niobium, you must process it here. If you're digging this stuff, let it stop here first. Let know exactly where you're taking off, the value you add into it, and where you're going for. But we have not checked on those things, and that's where government responsibility comes in to really provide that cover for the people to make sure we can get to those revenue targets that we are setting. And they're high, they're ambitious, but it's possible for us to get to them.
But in fact, if you look at the national budget, which is now over $1 billion, let's ask ourselves, what are we getting in return? What is the, I'll go back to your point. What is the qualitative analysis of that budget? And what is the quantitative analysis of that budget as it relates to every political subdivision in that country? I
And that's why
mean,
the Minister of Finance got to ask himself all the time, you know,
I
how is
mean,
this budget benefiting the people?
yeah, this cannot be, let's go back to that old Ronald Reagan, right? Many Liberians who know who Ronald Reagan was one of the American presidents. We can't just focus on tax and spend. We can't just tax, collect people money and just spend it. No, there's
Yes,
got to
that's the
be,
people's money. That's the
that's it,
people's money.
it's the people's money. So you've got to be a better steward of the people's money. You've got to be a better custodian of the people's money. And the most important aspect of that money must be what? Investment. Investment. You've got to invest. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the energy sector. Let's just talk about telecommunication sector. We've got
Somebody asked me, are you the only energy professional, only Liberian energy person in the diaspora? I said, no, I don't think so.
maybe the other ones don't want to talk. That's
Yep,
why.
that's exactly what I told her.
Let's look at the telecommunication sector. When I was home a year before that, 2024, right? I visited several BTS sites, cell sites. I'm not just home on vacation, but I'm observing different things. Most of Lone Star and Orange, or Lone Star MTN and Orange cell sites, they've compensated because they've identified energy as their what? As the Achilles heel for the telecommunication infrastructure and the network and their what? In their revenue stream. Because once the power goes off and the BTS goes off, they cannot make any money within that coverage area. You get my point. So they
Yeah.
themselves they operate within an ecosystem. So what have they done? They've integrated solar energy as part of their BTS infrastructure. So what they've done is they through engineering they've isolated they've tied their BTS site is still tied to LEC, but
Mm.
they have their generator, they have a changeover switch, they have their battery backup, and they have a solar backup as well. So that way they're guaranteeing, I mean, it's more costly for them, but they're guaranteeing and ensuring that what their revenue stream, their qualitative and their quantitative analysis of their investment. They don't want any interruption in their revenue flow. So again, they've identified that energy is critical for them. Okay, so let's go to telecommunications. These two privately owned companies, Orange and Lone Star, let us not forget the profits of these companies do not stay in Liberia. They are exported.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
exported. So now we have the telco, the People's Telecommunication Network. What are we investing in that infrastructure so that we can get a portion of that revenue stream, so that money stays within country, create more jobs in telecommunication sector, decentralize LEC into all the political subdivisions. Why should Lone Star be the only company, Lone Star or Right be the only company in Maryland County or in River G or in Grand? Why can't the people's network that they pay their taxes for use existing technology to decentralize and also participate in that major segment of the Liberian economy, that critical segment of the ecosystem? Again, the right thinking needs to be brought into this. Out with the old, in with the new way of thinking ecosystem and how everything is interdependent on the next one so that we can produce the type of results, create jobs, provide opportunities for this large voting bloc, which are the young people of this country. Here it is, here it is, here it is. Graduation season is on. You
Mm-hmm.
talk to everybody in Liberia right now, the vocational training school, the trade school, the university, the colleges, they're graduating. I mean, Covington just put, I think, over 1,000 graduates. Where are the jobs? Where are the jobs?
Well, live for the
Where are
blanket
the
and
jobs?
fun.
Where are the jobs? We cannot hope our way into job creation. We cannot hope our way into job creation. We've got to make our way into job creation with a new way of thinking that the ecosystem has to be investments in the ecosystem, job creation in the ecosystem, telecommunications, energy, and all of those things play a role. The diaspora, like local Liberian innovation, all play a role. Government must focus on reducing its size and increasing the private sector to take the burden off of government and
That's
move
why you
more
got to be
money.
intentional. Part of that
You have to
role,
be intentional.
it can't just be willy nilly. It got to be a committed effort to change the lives of people to make sure that these policies don't affect them like they do. Because at any point in time, a lot of stuff is down to the lower people, the next level people. So if this man is getting tax extra at the port, he adding that on his price. So the consumers, they would get it. If medical stuff is cut and people gonna die, most time the younger children first, the women in childbirth and stuff. So these things compound. All these things affect our people. Impact us, be able to create that space where we can use our own money that people can tell us how to use the money or put
That's exactly
conditions
right.
on the money.
That's exactly right.
That's
That's
why
exactly right.
domestic revenue mobilization is so critical. We
It's
need to
so
find
critical.
places
So critical.
where we can make money. We can't just let people slide. We got to find a way to make money.
You
And
cannot
these
allow.
different value addition things where we are trying to produce some products, especially the ones where we already got most of the materials for. It's just the infrastructure around it that needs to happen.
That
Those are
needs
the
to
kind
happen.
of grow our economy, yes, to our economy.
You
So
you 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 know
we really,
you
really
bring
need to
up
do this.
you bring up a very important point, Alva. You bring up a very important point because I will expand upon agro ready. So if the owner of agro ready, we're giving you free promotion. We're dissecting your business today because I mean, if you look at what that young lady is doing, that's local innovation, that's local persistence and determination. She had to, pull capital from wherever she could. Buy, find it on the internet, find the right machines on the internet, travel to China or whatever the case is, buy those things, bring it back. But then when you look at the other aspect of it, real estate was also an important aspect of her success because you had to find a place, rent a place, and put the machines and build her facility. Then the other aspect of it is all the building material. That's another part of the ecosystem, a major part of the ecosystem. How many Liberian businesses or Liberian businesses are in that building material segment of the ecosystem? Building material is key. Building material is key to stimulate to grow because that's where all the building trades are: the plumbers, the roofers, the welders, okay, the masons, the carpenters, the electricians. So that I mean that's a massive segment, private sector segment of the Liberian economy that plays a major role within the ecosystem. If you think
Yeah.
about metal steel, for example, that whole mining infrastructure up there in Nimba and all of that loading equipment in Buchanan, how much material, electrical material, motor control. I mean, that's where I work in. So I mean, how much of that material is locally purchased, and whoever supplying those materials are they Liberians? Liberians benefit.
The Bureau of Concessions should be looking at all those things. I mean,
So
there's a lot of work to do, and
there's a lot of
like
work
you
to do.
said, it's not easy for the people in the front. They have to do the work for the people in the back and the people down the line to benefit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is wonderful topic. But sometimes time goes.
Yeah, of course.
Time carries.
Time goes.
Is at that time where
Yeah.
for me, I'm also out here. We really, if you have a question out there, we want you to come in and ask a couple of questions on what this Washington Consensus is doing, how it affect the wage bill, what kind of programs the IMF have included to limit some of what the government can do and what it can do. No hiring in a public sector, even though we want the private sector to be the one that really create the jobs and do everything, but government has to work for that. So
yes. That is not free. We cannot hope our way into that. Government has a role to play. They have the most critical role to play, and that critical role is the thinking. The thinking has to be different. If you bring a different way of thinking to a business meeting, the entire agreement changes because of their new way of thinking.
Right.
Because of the new way of thinking. Yes. So
if people want to look at some of the documentation, the IMF there, the IMF.gov, worldbank.org, IMF.org, they can really get a lot of this information and read themselves. But then again, we know a lot of people don't like to read, so who knows? Not insulting anybody, but reading is fundamental. We need to read more. We need to be involved. And those of our people who are into the education thing, they really got to learn, because at the end of the day, if you come to the table with these guys and don't know what you're talking about, they will just eat you up. These guys are sharks. They don't care you're developing, you're not developing.
They don't care. They've already made their money on the back end. So you're just, they've already made their money on the back end. So you're just walking in. You're just the lamb being led to the altar for the slaughter.
So before I head, I just want to share with our folks, because we at the end we want to say what kind of responsibility are we now putting on you, because we say the government or the business or the everyday person, or all of these people need to be involved, right? So we're telling the government now, maybe you can go back and renegotiate some of these IMF, or World Bank programs and stuff like that. But at least make a commitment going forward that these different policy instruments as instruments that come from us, that have our content. We got local content in there. We got some processing mandates that will require some of these companies to process their product in Liberia, at least the first or second level, right? And then opening up this credit market for Liberians to be able to have access to capital. That's one of the biggest things. And then when the people bring these stand-up boilerplate templates for their programs, their structural adjustment programs, etc., try to have some pushback and try to have your own model of how you want to see our country run, our country benefit to present to them, And then the businesses, right? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the barriers? We got the Liberian Business Association, and I think a couple of Liberian entrepreneurial groups and stuff, and they are trying to do well. But, how holistic is the effort? Then what they got to look at it, essentially, they got to look at some of this inefficiency in government, some of the things that they can provide prescriptions for government to be successful. And then for all of you who listening to this, okay, and you can enjoy, what the government say, the IMF loan approved. Start asking questions about those loans. Don't just hear the good news. Understand how they arrive at that decision to do X, Y, Z. Is it really for the people, or is it for whoever we're making those concession agreement with? So we got to start thinking people first and start doing these things. So, Akina, I will leave it with you to close. I just want to say thank you to our folks in the counties for taking the show out to as many people as possible. We really, really, really appreciate that, because we want more people to understand what's going on and be able to relate. So Folks, for those of you who listen or will watch later or will listen later, thank you. We truly appreciate it. We're trying to grow this show. Um, feel free to comment, feel free to call in. And hopefully next week we'll have some resolution to our core station problem and be able to, have a wonderful, wonderful show. But again, thank you. Thank you for coming on. I'll leave it with you. Oh, the man left the stage. I want to leave something with you and you were not here. So I will leave it with you and go and go take care of some of the business out there that I got to do today. And
No
folks, thank
worries. Don't be-
you. Appreciate you, for the show. So let
enjoy your Independence Day. Enjoy the SS Festival.
yes, happy July 4th to all those
July 4th, yes.
Liberian Americans and to the Americans themselves and other different nationalities that have become American. This is important. This is 250 years of independence, something that the red men won't throw away from the people, but they are holding on. They really, really are holding on. This country has systems. That's the advantage. And that's what I was talking about before. They got system in place. Some of us we don't, you know. But to you and to everybody, thank you.
Well, in my closing, I just want to say thanks to all of the listeners, all of those who watched the program today on Facebook Live, YouTube, LinkedIn, and those are all the listeners in Upper Magdibi, Lower Magdibi County by way of Radio Kakata and Radio Lila in Ball County. Thank you so much for listening to the show, participating, those who sent in chat messages, Justin Smith out there in Middle Odessa, Francis Kroma, Jusu Hassan in Kakata, Emmanuel Moses. Thank you very much for saying that our show is educative. And Justin just put a comment saying that the IMF decisions are rarely, if ever, done for the people. Yes, indeed. That's the key point. IMF has its own benchmark, its own objectives and objectives and outcomes that they're desiring. The question is whether or not our leaders are have defined their own objectives and their own outcomes for their own people and their own governments. So thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for listening to Business Talk. We will be back here same time next week, every Saturday, by way of the internet. We could not broadcast today in Monrovia at Love FM because they've got some technical problems on their tower that they're trying to do, and we should be completed during the week. But we're always here by way of StreamYard through the power of the internet. And that we're talking about now, a new way of thinking, a new way of thinking for our Liberian leaders. We need you to, remove the old way of thinking and bring in the new way of thinking. Think about the people, quantitative analysis of your policies and programs and qualitative analysis of your policies and programs, and think from the ecosystem perspective. Energy plays a very important role. Telecommunications plays a very important role. Roads and bridges play also a very important role. But again, they're not independent of each other. They're all interdependent on each other. The Liberian diaspora accounts for a major capital investment into our own country. But again, that investment will not come in unless we take care of the Liberian government takes care and make the proper investment in the critical infrastructure that is required, that is needed to make these investments produce the job, produce the benefits, produce the return on investments for those investors. Even foreign direct investment depends on infrastructure within this ecosystem. The radio stations across the country, they all play a very important role in the ecosystem because they disseminate information, and all the young people graduating from colleges in mass communications, they have jobs and they can also create content and do different things. The agriculture sector, from the planters in the field to the market women to those who are buying it from the market or directly from the field, to make investments in value addition to create more jobs and also feed a product distribution network across the country. Everybody plays a critical interdependent role in the ecosystem. We need to now bring in, embrace, and hold on to this new way of thinking. It's all about the Liberian economic ecosystem. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Happy July 4th to all of my friends across the US, and happy and blessed weekend to everybody out there in Monrovia, Liberia. Have a great day. I love you, and God bless. Bye bye.